Good. Right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting for the 4th of February 2025. Please be advised everyone present that this is a public meeting and it is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. We'll start with item 1, declarations of interest. There being none, I will move on to apologies for absence and substitutes.
Mr. Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor Bullman, Wymark and Toppell, and substitutes are Councillor Brennan and Councillor Nerden.
Thank you. Thanks and welcome substitutes. Let's move on to item number 3, the minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 21st of January 2025. Is everyone happy with the minutes or have any comments to make on them? Grant.
Thank you, Chairman. Just looking at the item number 2203 on page 7, I looked at the question I asked, and that was 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, 5th line. Kind of like don't read that correctly, and I think it's a typographical error. It reads, which is less in core government grant, that 24-25. I presume that it should be then, or because it doesn't quite make sense.
I obviously missed the start of where you said, which page would that be on in our...
Page 7 of the minutes. Budget questions for Cabinet.
As a teacher, I'm so pleased that someone else is picking up on these little minor grammar errors. Usually I'll be circling or highlighting. We highlight in yellow at my school, so I'll have to get that out next time. Thank you. Anyone else? Is everyone else happy? It looks like a general level of happiness, if that can be expressed in nobody making eye contact with me. So we'll move on to item number 4, Chairman's announcements, of which I have none to make, except that, again, in discussion, we appear to be very cosy here tonight. We would like it to be extended a little bit further, and hopefully that will be. Lacey, you want to say something?
I did. I want to congratulate you on your outstanding Ofsted and your mention and Marcross Primary's mention in Parliament yesterday.
Well, thank you very much. It's a team effort, as we know, of any successful enterprise or project. So thank you for compliments to my school. It's the children who are the real winners. So there we go. Okay, public speaking, item number 5.
There's no public speaking, Chair.
Thank you. And cabinet reports we're straight on to then. We have the revenue budget and council tax 2025-26, which is being led by Rodney and team.
Thank you, Chairman. On the agenda tonight are the 3 papers which, taken together, form the budget papers for 25-26 for next year, namely the revenue budget, the capital budget and the Treasury Management Strategy. The first report that I'm going to take you through tonight is the Council's revenue budget proposals for 25-26. So this report very much takes you through the steps we do in forming the budget proposals. First of all, we work out the cost of running our core services. We then add on the other items of income and expenditure, things like investment income, various contributions to our reserves. We then look at our government funding, how much funding we're going to be getting to help fund our services. And this year, based on the provisional finance settlement, this council would be getting £338,000 less compared to last year. I have got an update on that slightly in a moment. And we also work out how much income we're going to be able to collect and keep from business rates income. We then bring all those calculations together to work out how much needs to be collected from council taxpayers for the year. So this year we're proposing, or the Cabinet are proposing, a balanced budget with no need to draw on the general reserve at all. and the report is proposing no increase in council tax, which will keep the BDC Bandy council tax charge at £134.91 for 25-26. Within the report, it's worth pointing out various other sections. For instance, Section 5 provides information about the budget consultation that we took. Section 6 sets out the proposed changes to our fees and charges, and this year's is worth noting that it's proposed that most fees and charges will increase by the September RPI figure of 3.5%. Section 11 of this report sets out the proposals for the special expenses. So these are the charges we levy specifically for the streetlights in Great Witchingham and Helsden. And this year it's proposed to reduce this charge to £10 for the residents of Great Witchingham and £15 for the Helsden residents. As part of this report, I also need to draw to your attention my advice on these proposals, and my advice is very much that the budget is robust, it's been produced in a robust and a sensible manner, and if the proposals are accepted, I believe that the level of reserves remaining after these budget proposals is adequate for our short to medium term requirements. I said I was going to give you a quick update on that reduction in grant. Just yesterday we had the final local government settlement came out, and we had a new grant being announced, and this was a grant to reimburse us for extra costs of national insurance contributions. So Broadland will be getting another £107,375 towards these costs. And this grant income is not reflected in the proposals in front of you tonight. That was all I was going to say on the budget proposals, and open for questions.
Thank you very much. I saw Grant got his hand up very quickly, so well done, Grant. You can go first.
There we go. Sorry. Got 5 questions, and I'll read them out, and then you can just make a note of each one of them. I looked at the summary paragraphs 2.23 on page 17 and 3.12 on page 20. And
can we do one at a time? I promise we'll come back each time. I think it'll be easier.
Okay.
I think we'll lose track of the flow.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's okay. Sorry to interrupt you.
Not a problem. Right. So first question is, what are you doing about moving reserves to address the pressures of temporary accommodation? And sorry, and in regard to that, I was talking about paragraph 2.23 of the summary and paragraph 3.12, and that is on page 17 and page 20.
So we're not actually proposing to change any of the reserves. What it is proposed in this budget is actually the actual budget amount we're setting aside for homeless accommodation costs, and that's very much set out in paragraph 2.17, and the budget for these temporary overnight accommodation is going to increase from £198,000 in the current year to £810,000 for next year. So that's reflecting a potential significant increase in homelessness demand. Obviously, Cabinet are fully aware of this pressure and looking at options to try and reduce this. As you know, in the past, we have been successful in purchasing a property through the LAF programme, and something like that may come forward again in the future. But at the moment, it's budgeted on the potential bad scenario of having significant extra demand for people being placed in homeless accommodation.
Thank you, Rodney. With the climate and biodiversity emergency being called, what projects do you have money set aside for, and when do you plan to implement these? Because I looked at the pie chart on page 42, and it's the largest of the capital projections of 9 million, and that's over the period of, I think, to 3030. Let me just have a look on page 42. There we go. 38% for the 25-26 to 29-30 capital program. So basically, the projects and when do you plan to start those projects?
So, page 42 is actually moving on to the capital budgets. So this first paper is very much on the revenue budgets, and perhaps we can come back to that question on when we get to the capital budgets. But very much within that revenue budget, you will have sort of sufficient resources to deliver the environmental strategy, which I believe you have seen in the past. So very much we are aiming to deliver the projects in that environmental strategy towards that target of that sort of a carbon neutral target.
Okay, fine. Third question was, if we look on page 14, paragraph 1.4, the last paragraph, and that talks about the devolution and local government reorganisation. It says there, if plans for devolution and local government reorganisation progress, then the revenue budget and the medium-term financial projections will need to be reviewed in light of any reorganisation decisions taken. So I highlight the words will need to be reviewed, which refers to the revenue budget, the one that we're talking about tonight, and the medium-term financial projections. How does a review affect what council approves? Not necessarily tonight, but when council sits and agrees the budget. And is it linked in any way to recommendation 1.1, where any changes are delegated to the Assistant Director of Finance?
As members will be aware, there's been no decisions on devolution or local government reorganisation, and therefore it'd be preemptive to actually put any budgets in specifically for that. But if a decision was made, you can see that you'd want to start doing some preparatory costs to make sure that actually the councils and the successor council was in the best possible position to start with, and we're doing work to actually make sure actually we can start aligning our systems going forward. You also might want to consider, well, actually, there might be things in your capital programme in years 4 and 5. Obviously, if this council wasn't to exist, you may want to bring them forward or actually not start the actual preparatory work on these. So there's various things you might want to look at if and when devolution occurs. This paragraph isn't any way related to the request to delegate a change to the budget, and very much in 1.1. That delegation 1.1 was just to say actually if the final local government settlement actually was slightly different to what the provisional was, then I would have the ability to make that change to make sure that the budget was still balanced. But that delegation wasn't in fact anything to do with a local government reorganisation or devolution.
So what I'm trying to clarify is if there are going to be any changes once the budget has been set and agreed, if there are any further changes, will that be made by you without reference to the council, or will it be a council decision?
Very much, once the budget is set, that is the council's budgets. There is obviously some ability in the constitution for small scale changes, but anything significant would obviously need to come back through cabinet and potentially full council for a decision to amend the budget in any significant way.
Thank you. Then going on to the fourth question, paragraph 2.25 on page 18 of the summary, you talk about efficiencies and the payroll costs, which you need to actively consider and reduce. So the question is, does this involve another organizational restructure and or any redundancies?
As a council, we've always been looking for ways to deliver our services more efficiently, and it's recognised that actually one of our big costs is staffing costs, and you will see that actually the cost of staff does go up over time, probably more than actually the increase we get from financial settlements from government. So it's something that we'll need to continually look at. And there are things on the horizon like the customer experience programme, AI, things like that that could potentially affect our workforce, and it's something we'll need to continue to look at.
Can I just specifically just go back on the question in terms of redundancies? We are not at the moment in any position with the information that we know making any redundancies in light of where we are as a council or where we are in terms of devolution and LGR. I just want to say that because we have got staff in the room that could be quite upset by such questions. I just need to make that clear that we are not in that position.
Thanks, Emma. Right. The last question I have is in respect to paragraph 6.6, which justifies the increase in the garden waste collection, in other words, the brown bin. In the 24-25 budget, we saw significant increases which were not exactly aligned, those that were on direct debit and those that weren't. And what I'd like to know is, when we look at the effect of that increase in 24-25, did we see the percentage increase in the income, and do you believe that it's going to be between 4.6 and 4.8% increase in the income for the budget going 25-26? Because if when you increased the 24-25 amounts, did it bring in the percentage that you expected it to do? Because the reason I'm asking is because I have a number of residents who've come to me and said to me, I'm going to stop because of the increases. It's just becoming exponentially too big. So that's my question to you.
I think firstly it's worth pointing out that we don't set the charges in order to try and make a profit out of this service. The idea is it is set to cover the cost of operating this facility. There's always a chance that actually if you put prices up, for some people it will get more challenging and they might decide to actually stop the service. But what we're seeing is a continual growth in the number of people subscribing to the garden waste service. And indeed, I believe on the capital programme, we're potentially looking at having to put a new round in and a new vehicle because of that continuing demand for that service. So at the moment, I think it's fair to say that the income is still remaining buoyant, and indeed, we'd expect to see that increase in fee level being reflected in increases in income.
Thank you. Who else would like to ask some questions? Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just try and summarise what's happening here then? So we have a revenue for the coming year of 300,000 less from government. We are proposing to keep the town council tax at the same rate as the previous year. We are now allowing more monies for the areas that we need it most, such as temporary accommodation. Correct? Quite frankly, I think this is very well thought out, and I wholeheartedly endorse it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Who else would like to ask anything? At which point I will ask something if no one's... Oh, I see someone pointing. Oh, sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah, my question is, if we turn to page 38, we see the charts that obviously show the consultation responses. When we look at that, we see that it's obviously the sort of like the 4 questions about obviously spending the money on Broadland growth, a very positive sort of way of looking at it. My concern is when we go to page 21, we see that the consultation was open for just over a month, but we only had 62 responses. Now, obviously, we have a few more residents than 62. So my concern is that when we talk about consultation, if we're showing those charts that are on page 38 and saying this is what, you know, we're basing decisions on the fact that it's a very popular thing to do, when actually that's only the sort of 60% of 62 people. And I just think that's a bit of a concern that they could be misrepresented. So I'm just sort of asking the question there, do we really, you know, do we always get only 62 responses, or is this a low number, or is this a high number for a consultation? I don't know. That's my question, is about the consultation.
I agree, 62 is a disappointing number of responses. It is in line with what we've had in previous years. As I say, the comms team do try and promote it via our Facebook page and Twitter and things like that, but we do have a low number of respondents. And indeed, I think we're quite clear in paragraph 5.3 to say, actually, we're up front, we're saying it's only 62 residents and therefore may not be representative of the population. So it's not being held out as this is what all your residents think. It's a small snapshot.
Just coming back on that, yeah, I fully agree. It does explain it there. But when I looked at the page sort of 38 and saw that, where everybody was sort of saying about investing in Broadland growth, I was thinking, excellent. We've got lots of residents that think the same as me, that we should be using Broadland growth. And that does look like a really good sort of way of highlighting that. But obviously, then you look back and you see the number. So, yeah, it was sort of positive, really, when I was looking at it. And then I was thinking, well, actually, I'd like to see more residents that agree and that we should be doing more things with Broadland growth.
It's a shame that it's not such a great ringing endorsement of your views as you first thought, Jonathan. He's going to walk triumphantly out of the meeting with his hand in the air aloft saying, yes, everyone agrees with me. But at least some people do. We have the evidence that some people do. So, and that's not to be facetious. That's me being just me. Yeah, sorry. Can I just ask, from my point of view, obviously, we're still in a slightly uncertain place in terms of economic moves. You know, we saw dramatic changes in stock prices in one part of the world yesterday, which suddenly tried to reverse themselves when somebody changed their mind. We could be thrown into some sort of worldwide recession by the views of somebody whose mind seems to be in the 1930s. So have we got sufficient wiggle room for example, if we suddenly had major problems and interest rates stay high, which I know probably benefit us with the money we've got in the bank, but we don't know how things are going to go. And I know you said it's a worst case scenario, but do you think we have all the sufficient checks and balances in place to say we can cope with anything that's thrown at us?
I agree, we're in challenging times. We have been for a number of years, sort of thing, and particularly going forward, we've got challenges with future government funding levels, because they're talking about reviewing the funding levels. So unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball, and we can't say we can cope with everything, but we do have a healthy level of reserves. So actually, if the worst happened, we would be able to take a balanced approach to look at addressing that over the medium term. But I certainly can't promise that actually whatever happens will be fine, but actually we're in a good position compared to most other authorities. And from my point of view, based on a reasonable set of assumptions, I believe the level of reserves we hold are adequate for our needs in the short to medium term.
And on the point that Grant was mentioning, and obviously we are absolutely not saying it's to do with there's any risk of redundancies, but am I right in thinking the council has taken quite a lot of action to reduce consultants' fees? Is that part of the savings that we've made in making good use of staff who've got the skills within the council to do jobs rather than bringing in outside consultants? Is that one of the reasons that we might have seen some savings in that particular area?
Yes, the level of consultancy spend is something that I know the current portfolio holder for finance is really keen and have to provide him with information on actually that level, and he's been very keen to say what can we do to reduce it. But I think this is in line with our workforce strategy. We're very much about trying to grow our own talent and actually give people opportunities. So if we have got people in the organisation with the abilities to do stuff, even if they had to move around, we would try to accommodate that to actually use the skills we've got. Not only is that good for staff development, but it's also a cheaper way of doing it compared to a consultant.
I'll ask Caroline first, then I'll go to Stuart, then I'll go to Adrian.
I just wanted to reiterate Tony's comments. I think this is a good budget. I know services are increasing all the time, so we're very glad that we're not increasing our council tax in line with that. Also, we've got more money for homeless projects. And I think I would congratulate Rodney and the team and Councillor Riley for producing such a robust budget this year. Thank you.
Stuart.
You know, I'd just like to be associated with your comments about the use of external consultancies, and also to associate myself with Rodney's comments that to grow talent, to use managers and to use staff as development, and to challenge staff to actually solve problems and to deal with the matters using internal skills is a far, far better way of dealing with things, because you not only encourage ambition, you not only encourage career development, but you encourage the things which we all deem as, well, the majority of us deem as important. You encourage personal responsibility and accountability. So I think that's a great route to be going down, and I wholly and completely support that route. Unlike some councils who spend copious amounts of money in that area, I think we do a good job on that, and I'd like it to go on the record as such, and support your view, Chairman.
Thank you. Adrian.
Just a quick question. Looking at medium-term financial strategies from 7.2, Rodney, you got a bit that you said that funding from the government, you assumed like 2.5% over the next few years. But you said that's gone down to 5.9 this most recent year. So on the graph below, what projection is that? Is that showing the 2.5% per year from 26, 27 onwards, or I noticed it's slightly steeper from 25 to 25, 26 to 26, 27, and then the line seems to be the same gradient. So I'm just trying to understand that graph. Does that represent the 2.5% year on year, or have you adjusted that now based on the most recent settlement?
We have adjusted it, so we're assuming a flat line increase in grant. The only anomaly is next year, you may recall, with the food waste, the government has said it was going to fund food waste, and therefore if things are to be true, then we should be seeing a grant for 26-27 for help towards the cost of running the food waste. As this council's already rolled out food waste, that should be not a bonus, but an appropriate reflection of our current costs. So that's why you've got that slight kink in that projection going forward.
So is the rest of the line following that 2.5% year on year? Is that what you're still assuming, or for that to grow from government funding?
No, that's assuming a flat line from government, but it's assuming an increase in council tax each year.
Okay.
Which we obviously will consider each year as and when it comes around.
Okay. Yeah, go on.
So just a quick one then. You said that's assuming a flat, but with council tax going up. So I suppose the question is really that'd be a flat line and completely flat, then, so we'd have a massive gap against the money we need to run the council versus the money we get from government.
Sorry if I haven't been clear. I've assumed that the government grant is flatlined, but assume that council tax income goes up by £5 a year, which is why that graph is still going up each year for your total sort of funding availability.
So go back and forth. So I think that shows the great, some of the other councillors said here tonight, the great job the team have done to get a balanced budget this year about increasing council tax. Because if you look at future years, to not increase council tax and still meet a balanced budget will be very challenging in the future. So to do it this year, that's a really good example. So congratulate the team and everyone on achieving that.
Martin.
Sorry, mine's just a very quick one. There's a typo on recommendation 1.3 because it's looking at the year 2004 to 2025.
Yeah, on the next page, on the 1.3, same level as 2004-24. It's just a typo. These things happen. That's why we're here, to scrutinise. We're doing our job. Has anybody else got anything else they'd like to ask? One final thing that just came to me regarding the possibility, section 1.4 again, that Grant raised about future changes subject to local government review. Actually, I'm just going to say I think that's a good thing that we're at least taking that into account, because I guess we have no idea what cost could fall to us, but I also I appreciate, I think, the fact that it would be very easy for us to say, let's think about this now as a 2-year budget and spend all the cash, or not necessarily spend all the cash, but run the reserves down and then not have any contingency should there be a bill at the end for things that need to be done to deal with the local government reorganisation, and that would fall on council taxpayers. So I guess one of the reasons for us having this budget as is and proving that we're still keeping everything going is that we're actually, you know, we're not running this as a 2-year venture. We're running it as an ongoing concern. We're budgeting correctly in the long term. Is that a fair summary, or is that me putting a gloss on it?
No, that is correct. This is based on us continuing, and indeed the services will continue whatever. So actually, if the organisation does come along, the bins for the residents will still need collecting. It might be a different sort of a organisation name sort of coming to collect them, but actually the residents still need to be served, and actually hopefully they'll take the opinion that actually it's our job to make sure the residents are looked after whatever comes.
Thank you. Don't see anybody else indicating they want to say anything at this point before we go to the recommendations. I would just like to thank you for all the hard work you put into this before we go to the vote. But we'll go to the recommendations. I'm assuming that everybody's happy to take all the recommendations together, apart with the amendment as stated for the years. All those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand.
And that's unanimous, Chairman.
Super. Thank you very much. I would genuinely say, after I know Steve's been at some of these meetings, a cabinet member, Steve Riley, explaining some of the budgetary problems, as have you, Rodney, been talking about some of the things that have been thrown at the council recently. So I think we were probably all a little bit surprised when we actually saw it come through as a recommendation as it is. So, but I think you're all to be congratulated for all the hard work you've put in. So thank you. We'll move on to the Cabinet reports, the Capital Strategy and Capital Programme, and this is being led on by Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides details of the Council's capital strategy and capital budgets for the period 25-26 to 29-30. Overall, the capital programme totals 23.6 million. The programme included Council's assets, repairs and maintenance, disabled facilities grants, warm homes, a new visitor centre at Broadland County Park, as well as a few other little lines. Appendix B on page 55 and 56 provides the full scheme by scheme breakdown. The expenditure will be funded from reserves, grants and capital receipts with no need for the Council to borrow. You will note from the funding analysis in paragraph 9.6, that's on page 45, that this programme will use 3.61 million of general revenue reserves. As such, the section 151 officer's advice, which is detailed on page 54, is that there is a need to review the medium-term capital programme during this forthcoming year in order to reduce the potential draw on the general revenue reserve. Cabinet is fully aware of this need and committed to continually reviewing the programme. And that's all from me, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to ask any questions or get anything clarified about the capital strategy and capital programme. I think, Grant, you actually had a question relating to that, did you not? So perhaps we go to Grant's question, which I can't remember what it was. Grant, you may want to remind us.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it was to do with the pie chart on page 42, which indicates that the plan is cleaner, greener, Broadland, 9 million, 38%, which is the largest portion. So we've declared a climate and biodiversity emergency, but I didn't see anything that would give us an indication of what projects is going to be spending 9 million over the next few years, and when are these projects going to be started or commenced?
Thank you. On the Appendix B, page 55, you'll see that it's in relation to the warm homes funding we'll be receiving. So there's 3 million in 25-26, 26-27 and 27-28, and that comes to the 9 million.
Thank you. I noticed there wasn't anything in here around actual specific schemes for the temporary accommodation. I know that we were very successful in the LAF funding, so we had the level 1 and level 2. And I just wondered whether or not we'd actually submitted a proposal for level 3 LAF funding, and if so, what requirements would come from.
For LAF 3 Part B, I think it's now called. I think that's for 17 potential properties. Until we know the outcome of that, we're not quite certain what we need to actually come back to members for. So I think the proposal is that we should know in the next few weeks, and the paper will be prepared for the March Cabinet with a potential ask for.
And that's not budgeted anywhere in these papers.
Correct.
Can I just clarify that point? I know that just obviously without it being explicitly written down X money for temporary accommodation property, we have sufficient funds, plenty, or not I say plenty, it makes it sound like we're rolling in cash, don't worry, but there are sufficient funds and pots of money that, there we go, back on again, for any suitable opportunities. We still have this money just because it's not explicit. Like I guess because in the past we've taken money from other pots very quickly to be able to act on opportunities. That still exists.
Yeah. As you say, there are various ways you could look to fund this potential additional acquisitions, say through using one of your earmark reserves, repurposing something in the existing capital programme, or indeed, as I believe on the last decision, it was to borrow it in the medium term to fund these. So I think these will all be decisions that Cabinet will need to look at, and will come back with a suggestion in that March Cabinet report.
Caroline.
Can I just ask, the device replacement programme, £110,000, so is that for staff or is that for members as well? Can we eventually get a decent laptop?
I would have to double check, but I do believe that is for both, so that does include the members and the staff replacement. Yeah.
So there's a separate line for that member replacement. Every 4 years we intend to replace members' laptop. So I think there's 71,000 in 27-28 for that.
Has anybody else got anything else they'd like to ask? Seems much more straightforward than the previous item. We'll therefore go to the recommendations, which is to which I'll say today. I'm not going to read them out because we cannot read for ourselves. All those in favour of the recommendations are stated in the papers.
And that's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We'll go to then item 9 on this agenda, which says Treasury Management Strategy Statement 25-26, and Georgina.
Thank you, Chairman. This report provides detail on the Council's statutory requirement to set a Treasury strategy for the forthcoming financial year. The strategy is built on the 3 principles of security, liquidity and yield, the most important of which is security of investment. There has been a change to the strategy from last year in relation to the limits. This is in Appendix 2, paragraph 17, where the limit with the Council's bank at Barclays has been increased to 15 million from 12.5 million due to business needs. The report includes the policy statement, annual investment strategy, counterparty risk issues, the scheme of delegation, prudential indicators, and notes on interest rates from our Treasury advisors. I'm happy to now take any questions anyone may have.
Thank you. Who would like to ask? I'll go to Lacey first, because to start with Grant, I'll give Grant a little bit more time to think up some more questions. So Lacey, then Grant.
Thank you, Chair. Page 63, 8.5, Scrutiny members training. Do we know how many members of Scrutiny have had Treasury management training, please?
I don't know the number, but I could find out and come back to you.
Grant.
Thank you, Chairman. Just looking on page 67, the Treasury Management Policy Statement, the last paragraph with the 2 little bullets, talks about socially responsible investments and investing in a socially responsible manner. It's a nice statement to have, but is it actively pursued in that we are making those inquiries to ensure that those investments are in fact deposited in a socially responsible manner? We're talking about how they actually do it, but do we actually know, and do we actually pursue finding out whether these are socially responsible, and who decides whether they are socially responsible at the time that we make the investments? Thank you.
So at the time of making the investments, we use our Treasury advisors, previously known as Link, but they're now MUFG Pensions. So they'll send over the list, and in that list they will include some green deposits in there. And Broadland does currently have some investments in green deposits. Yeah, they've got 4 million currently in Standard Chartered Sustainable Deposits, and we take the advice from MUFG on that.
Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just keep you on page 63, item 9, spot 4. It relates to the 91 pooled investment that we hold with a value of 7.261 million as at end of December. This was brought up at a previous meeting. I can't remember when it was now. This holding has been held for quite some time, well in excess of 5 years. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's somewhere close to about 8 years. Its performance as at best is abysmal. If you refer to page 64 now, 9.05, you have had a discussion with them and a decision has been made to move a quarter of it into another fund. Can I, and obviously the assurances that they have been given that going forward this will be monitored to ensure its performance remains acceptable. Can I ask, why only a quarter of it? If something is bad, it's bad, you switch it. So based on, you know, my reasoning behind and my question behind that is, I can only see, I can formulate my question based on purely what I see in front of me. You know, it may well be that they've been telling you that, oh yeah, give it time, we will recover, our style is out of favour, and so on and so forth. But bearing in mind the experience we've had with that, you know, if it's bad, then switch it all. If not, then it stays where it is. Could you put some colour on it? Why only a quarter?
Thank you. So before we decided to move the quarter, we did have a meeting with the manager of the investment fund. We asked them for a presentation on projection of what they think is going to happen with the fund, and that is where we decided to only move 25% to start off with whilst we monitor the fund, because it hasn't been that long since we did it, and we're going to measure it quarterly, and I can bring it to the ONS and Cabinet in the Treasury meetings to update on how the position is going. But we thought we'd see how moving 25% goes first before we decide what to do next with the rest of the money that's in there.
Thank you for that, Georgina. Okay, I mean, that's going forward, that's a plan. Just as an extension of my colleague Grant, from an ESG and ethical point of view, that would have been an ideal time to take those factors into account for the new investments. Were they taken into account?
So it's probably worth saying we haven't actually switched the money into a completely different fund. It's still within the same fund. It's just rather than it being a one type of fund where actually the majority of the money is paid out in the dividends, it's changed into an accumulation fund. So actually it holds more of it back in the fund in order to help bolster that sort of market value. So actually that the value of the fund should increase, because at the moment we have got a difference between the market value and the purchase value, where our market value is less than the purchase value. So the move is very much to help bolster that market value.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to dwell on this too long because we can go all night, by the way. That regretfully, all it sounds to me is that switching from income units to accumulation units. That does not get you a better investment management. You're still reliant 100% on the underlying fund manager's expertise, which regretfully they've failed to actually perform in this case. That really does need to be reviewed.
Sounds like something which I see a few people's like your eyes opening wide or nodding to this. It sounds like something which we would perhaps be interested to look at some point about the next financial statement about how this is doing. I know the markets are volatile at the moment. I look at my investments on my phone and go, oh my goodness, how much have I lost today? But I know so I know we have to measure these things over time. But yeah, over time. But it would be really interesting to look further into some of the questions which Tony's asking, because, you know, you look at the return since the end of the pandemic, it's been an absolute more or less upward trajectory of investments worldwide. And if we're not getting that, then we've got a lot of money in that fund which hasn't been earning residents the right amount of money, or the council. Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to qualify what I'm saying. Clearly, you know, one doesn't expect everyone to know all about investments, and here we employ an outside services of MUFG, right, which are pension consultants. It sounds very much, I mean, based on the very limited information that I have, it sounds like they are pension and markets consultants. They are not necessarily investment managers or have the necessary IP to be able to recommend investments. Right, that genuinely needs to be looked at. Even a poor performing fund would have done better for the length of time that we've held this investment based on the information that I've got. I'm happy to assist with it if necessary. I suppose that's the whole point about having members that are able to contribute to running the council. More than happy to help with that, but this really does need looking at because our residents are missing out badly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's the end of what I'm going to say about it.
Just wondering, just talking to Emma about, obviously you're chair of audit committee, are you not? There might be something which perhaps, I don't know, Emma's blank. Look, I'm confused. I'll ask Emma to speak.
Oh, shush, chair. Right. No, so so I think it's so there's a few what is it that's being asked, I think is really clear. So, because today you are looking at reports on behalf of Cabinet to make sure you're happy, and you can say as a committee, those recommendations are sound to go on to Cabinet. So that's one element. Tony, you've raised some questions and queries around the performance in terms of the strategy that's adopted and the people that we use. So audit committee, ordinarily you would say yes, but actually treasury management doesn't come within the audit committee's remit. It is through into Cabinet, so that route, that kind of traditional route, isn't there. So I think open to the committee are a couple of things. It's whether you want to have a look at it on your work programme, and it's whether you want to think about something that comes through the work programme through the overview and scrutiny routes. There's something potentially, Tony, you might want to have a look at a topic form around looking at that. In terms of whether it would be on the strategic risk register, I'm pretty sure this kind of thing will be on Rodney's operational and service area risk and would be managed through that route. I wouldn't expect it to be on the strategic risk register because I think they'll be managing it there. So I think your route was probably through the topic form, if that's something on reflection you want to take forward for ONS to have a look at.
Thank you. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to ask? Adrian?
I suppose slightly related to that one in terms of performance of that fund. Was that only just looked at recently to change that to 25%? What was the trigger or reason? Because surely that's something we do. You said about going forward quarterly. So when did we how often did we used to do that? And what triggered this most recent look at this fund?
I'd have to check how frequently we get the reports in about the performance of that fund sort of thing. But we'd notice a trend, and therefore we thought we'd actually have more of a review. So we did look at that performance over the past 10, 5 sort of a recent period to try and compare it to other performance. But that would be useful if you do a topic form to bring that information back to this committee.
Caroline?
I'll ask a difficult question. What's the return been on this investment? Or have we lost money on it?
As I recall, it's been a long-term return, about 5% a year over the period we've held it. But we need to double-check the exact figures on that.
So I get that from an ISA. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, and there's no fund manager doing that for me. That's a person at Barclays Bank or something. So yes, I think it's really good. I mean, this is the forum for us scrutinising and digging in, and I mean, at least it seems to be that something's happened. So we've, by doing that change, it's then spurred people to ask questions into it. You've already started looking into that, so I think that's a positive. However, we come back to the fact that we are approving the Treasury Management Strategy Statement as being something to move forward with, and we're judging it on everything that's been said and in this report. So I think we should probably move to the recommendations. All those in favour of the recommendations, please show them hand now.
And that's carried, Chair.
Thank you, and I hope, Tony, you will submit topic forms. I think a lot of people in here look like they'd be quite interested to find out more, and I think that will help the council going forward. So thank you. We are now moving on to item 10, the Council Tax Assistance Scheme for 25-26, and Lindsay. Thank you, Rodney, and your whole team for all the excellent work you've done in getting this done. I know there was a lot of late figures coming to you from government and various other sources, so I know there's been a lot of adjustments made, so thanks to everybody who's been putting a lot of hard work.
Right, thank you very much, Chair. So we're here today to talk about the Council Tax Assistance Scheme for the year 25-26. Before I start, just for clarity, this is just for working age customers. Pension age customers are prescribed to us through the prescribed regulation, so any changes we talk about here are simply for working age. The scheme is required to be agreed by the Council each year, even if no changes are made, and we haven't actually really made any changes to the scheme since we did a thorough review in 2022. Since that time, it has been continually reviewed by officers to ensure it is still effective and fit for purpose, that it gets the support to those in need, and we've been happy that it does continue to do so. However, this year there was an appetite to review the scheme again to check that it is still fit for purpose, and the steer was that any changes that we do make to it were to stay within the current budget. So with those two things in mind, we undertook several member workshops to discuss various ideas about what could be changed to better help our residents, see if we could improve it further still. And as part of this, with all the changes we discussed, we also modelled all these potential changes to make sure that they do stay within the budget, and also to see that the financial impact it would have on the residents. So following these workshops, we have come up with 4 proposed changes. I won't go into great detail about these here as they are explained in the report, but I'm happy to answer questions afterwards if anybody wants me to go into those in any detail. But those 4 changes are to increase the maximum CTA from 84% to 87%, so we can help every resident slightly more. It's also to increase the non-dependent deduction from a standard £5 to a £7 for those where a non-dependent deduction applies. To change the tolerance where a universal credit customer has their award changed, and the tolerance is going to change from £20 a month to the phrase the national living wage times 4.33, which will make it to a monthly figure. And we were also proposing to change the name of the scheme from council tax assistance to council tax reduction. The main reason for this being is council tax assistance was adopted in 2020 for political reasons. However, it isn't a legally recognised term, whereas council tax reduction is. It's in legislation and it's nationally recognised. So to avoid confusion for customers, if they went onto any advice websites, things like that, they'd know exactly what it was referring to. So we'd like to change it to that. The modelling that was undertaken shows that there is a slight increase in the cost of the scheme of only 1.56%. However, this is within the variance of 5%, within which it is considered to still be essentially cost neutral, and that's due to the number of fluctuations you get throughout the year in customer base and customer circumstances as well. So it's a budget which never actually stays exact throughout the year, or sorry, consistent throughout the year. These changes have also been consulted with County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office. The Police and Crime Commissioner's Office declined to comment. County Council gave a standard response, which I understand they have given to every Norfolk council, that they would like to see a county-wide scheme reduced to 75% and restricted to a Band D. However, there hasn't been an appetite to do a county-wide scheme, and again, county-wide, we felt that that was quite restrictive anyway, but it is their standard response they give every year. It has also been out for public consultation for 10 weeks, and the response was positive for every proposal, not only for the ones which would increase their award, but also for the non-dependent deduction increase as well. That's basically all the details, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Shane, you go first, then it'll be Mark.
Thanks, Chair. You answered my first question already, because I was at one of the workshops and I couldn't remember the change of the name from council tax assistance to council tax reduction. The other thing I'd just like you to expand on, because I know we talked about this quite a lot at the workshop, but 3.7, the page 92, where it talks about the tolerances and the increases in percentage, that as I understand it, this actually is a benefit also to the staff making the calculations, yes, rather than just for the residents. So if you could expand on that a bit, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Bear with me if it gets a little technical, but the tolerance is for universal credit customers only. And when you're a universal credit customer, we get a record through from the DWP every month about the universal credit award. If that changes even slightly, because we're aware of the customer's new income, we would normally amend their council tax assistance award, which would involve us having to, 1, make the assessment, 2, send them another letter, and the council tax team would have to more than likely reset their instalments again. And what we found this was doing when the tolerance scheme was brought in a few years ago was that it was causing not only confusion for the customer because their award kept changing, but it was very difficult for the council tax team to actually recover the bills because it would reset the instalments and keep pushing those instalments or direct debits sort of on to the next month, and then it would be changed again and move it on to the next month. And again, very difficult for the customer to be able to budget with that. So with what the tolerance brings in is a level that if your Universal Credit Award stays within that tolerance, we don't reassess the benefits, and so therefore the customer isn't rebilled. But we wanted to keep it within a reasonable amount that if a customer's income goes down or up, that they're not losing out significantly or not getting more benefit than they really should. And what this one here has done is we'd like to think it future-proofs it. So £20 we found wasn't enough to able to stop that anymore. People's income has increased so much that was brought in. What this does is it future-proofs it, that even with the increase in minimum wage, the tolerance will increase and take that into account going forward.
So even in the longer term, this actually saves time and money.
Yeah, exactly that. It saves time and money for the officers, and again, less phone calls, people can budget more. Yeah, exactly that.
Mark.
So the council tax assistance, you're looking at giving an extra 3%. It's saying that the estimated increased cost is going to be 109,000, but it's also saying that each additional percentage of council tax assistance is going to cost 49,000. So the maths doesn't math.
Okay, so the increase in percentage does cost that much approximately. As I say, with difference in customer base, it will always vary about, but that's the amount. We were aware that by increasing the percentage, it would come at increased cost, and that's therefore we brought in the change to the non-debt deduction, which reduces people's council tax assistance. Sorry, so that's where your saving comes in, and with the difference in that, it balances out a little more exactly to within the variance level that we were comfortable with.
Adrian.
I think given that some of the other reports we had this evening about where we've frozen council tax the year ahead for Band Ds, the fact you're increasing the support here at the same time as well should be council commended for that, for supporting their most vulnerable residents and the ones that need it. So I think it's great work from the team to be able to do that. So it'd be much appreciated by all the residents, and especially I like the change to that tolerance one because it saves staff time, but it actually allows our residents who are getting the support to much easier plan their financial thing, and that will help our residents greatly. So thanks to the team for that. Thank you.
Has anybody else got anything they'd like to add or say? Thank you for explaining that to us. I'm just double checking that no one else. Let's move to the vote on this, on the recommendations. All those in favour of the recommendations as stated.
And that's carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I think actually, as I just said, I think the renaming it just makes so much sense. Somebody moves just 5 miles across the border from Norwich to Broadland and they're looking up on the website trying to find something that doesn't exist on our website, potentially had all sorts of problems and issues. So I think that's a really good idea. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
We move therefore on to the Greater Norwich 5-year infrastructure investment plan and annual growth programme. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? And we have Adam to lead on this. Thank you.
I think that's working. Planning always has the best titles to its report, Chair. In terms of background to this, you'll appreciate that this is a annual process, so you may be aware of it from the past. So this report went to a meeting of the Greater Norwich Growth Board in November, and the purpose of bringing it here is to ratify those decisions which were made on a sub-regional basis through Cabinet and Council. As you'll be aware, our approach is to pool the Community Infrastructure Levy, or CIL. This pot of money is used to collect developer contributions towards infrastructure, and we do that across Broadland, Norwich, South Norfolk, and we work in partnership with the County Council too. As you would expect, it's a legal requirement to report on how these monies are being spent. So back in November, the Greater Norwich Growth Board received the reports that you're considering here today. They are in two parts. We've got the joint 5-year infrastructure investment plan for 2025 to 2030, and we have the annual growth programme for 25-26. And these give an overview of the SIL income received and shortlist projects for the Infrastructure Investment Fund contributions. There are various links in the report that take you to the detail of the SIL programme, but Table 1 summarises the 25-26 annual growth programme, and from a Broadland perspective you'll note the two recommendations that for 25-26 the annual growth programme includes for Broadland Country Park and Cafe and Visitor Centre a total of 1.6 million, of which 871,000 is from the pooled SIL, and there's a second project too, which is Buckingham Ancient Woodland, and that project there totals 104,000 for pooled SIL.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask? Either they've run themselves into the ground, or your report is so clear that it needs no questioning. I was just going to say there's a section in here about outside of the immediate part of 6.1.3. Outside of these immediate projects, SIL forecasts indicate a significant decline in receipts over the short term. This is a direct result of predicted impact of nutrient neutrality and on the delivery of development. Do we think that, obviously the government have said that they want to sweep aside some of the rules regarding these things? I know you can't comment on what the government are going to say, but do you think the nutrient neutrality things that we're put in place, like the fund we have and there's projects coming forward, is that going to mitigate some of that, do you think, or are we working on a sort of worst case scenario on that and hoping for more?
We obviously forecast our housing supply because that's a big part of the local plan process. We use that housing forecast then to look at our SIL forecasts. We are very cautious with those SIL forecasts so that we make sure that we're confident we're going to get more SIL income in than projects that we're committing to, so that there are various sort of checks and balances in the system. The planning policy team works with the rest of the planning department to look at our SIL forecast both for housing and other types of development, i.e. employment office type development, and then we provide those forecasts back to the Greater Norwich Growth Board team. So there's various checks and balances to ensure caution in the SIL forecasting. Our housing forecasting does involve talking to the developers, so not only are we using our sort of background information that we collect as a planning department, but we're talking to the individual developers about when they expect to bring forward their sites. So there's quite a lot of background information into those forecasts.
Have you detected any sort of movement, or is it still a very much still in terms of these things? What I'm saying is, have you detected amongst those people you've been speaking to any sense that, oh, this is going to get things moving?
From examples I've been involved in, yes, I think there is a degree of positivity about how the nutrient neutrality mitigations are starting to take effect on the ground, but obviously people such as Phil Courtier and Tom Sayer are better placed to advise.
Adrian?
Yes, we've got looking for this one particular new project on here about the school for oral health. So I think a lot of our residents and people across not just a Greater Norwich but the whole of Norfolk will be very, very pleased with that. I myself, I work in Ipswich and found a colleague that lives down in Ipswich had registered for a dentist in Norwich because he couldn't get any places. So this kind of provision and training, as you can see, it's hopefully starting in 2026. I think it's fantastic news. That's a great project to to invest the money in. So everyone should be congratulated on that.
Martin.
Thank you. I think I did remember asking something similar, so I apologise to this. But I know that on page 125, the table there, where we've got the education section, and I know that then goes through to section 11. Now I note there that they have said around the two major places for the secondary schools coming in, but I know that on like the GT16 site there were two primary schools, but there's no mention of those. Now one of the primary schools was going to be in the first phases in there, so I wondered if there was any, you'd had any details of those.
I don't know that planning application well enough from Taylor Wimpey to give a direct answer. Probably Tracy Lincoln or Peter Kerrison would be best placed to answer that, I'm afraid.
Caroline.
I just want to say I was pleased that the Broadland Country Park Cafe and Visitor Centre was passed at planning last week, and I think that would be a great facility for our Broadland residents.
And Martin, Emma's suggesting we probably get a written response to you in response to your question, if that's useful for you. Thank you. Yes, let's move on. I think we've fully gone through this and everyone seems very happy. We'll move to the recommendations, which are stated there. All those in favour?
And that's carried, Chairman, unanimously.
Super. Thank you very much. Oh, you're up again. Sorry. So we move on to Broadland Local Development Scheme update January 2025. Adam.
Members will be aware that there was a plethora of planning documents released by the government just before Christmas, and that has continued. In the background to this report at paragraph 2.1, I explain how one of the documents we're obliged to produce is a local development scheme. That is simply a timetable for writing our various local plan documents. And amongst the announcements from the government was a request from the Deputy Prime Minister that all planning authorities produce a updated local development scheme, and that those schemes are provided to the Ministry for Housing and Community and Local Government by the 6th of March. We've prepared this report in response to that. As I point out in paragraph 3.2, although the Greater Norwich local plan is a relatively recently adopted plan, plan making doesn't stand still, and we're obliged to review our local plan every 5 years. We've therefore written this report and the associated local development scheme on that basis. Under the issues and risks to this report, I point out that reviewing the Greater Norwich local plan will have significant resource implications. Those decisions haven't yet been taken and would be subject to being reported to councillors later in the year. However, in the meantime and in conclusion, I point out that this is a response to a request from government, and we've prepared this timetable in line with our statutory responsibilities to review and update the Greater Norwich local plan within 5 years, which takes us to March 2029.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask? No questions at all. 3.3. There's a sort of double check. Right. Simmons, you see that?
3.3, wasn't it?
Yeah, having adopted the GNLP, officers were already considering recommendations for how and over what period the GNLP should be reviewed. The new MPPF. Ah, it's a different section. That's the yeah. So hang on, 3.3. As of January 25, there are a number of emergent neighbourhood plans which is adopted. Yes, which if adopted. Yeah. We're grammar pedants today, aren't we? We've really earned our tea tonight. Wonderful, thank you. Okay, well, let's go to the vote. Let's all those in favour?
And that's carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. And finally, we have the delivery plan, final item on the agenda, 2024-2026, an update with Matt and the team.
Good evening, Chair and members. The report that you have in front of you lays out the proposed midpoint refinement of the Council's 2024 to 2026 delivery plan. You'll see that majority of it looks very similar to the original delivery plan for 2024 to 2026 that Council agreed to in February last year, with updates to progress summarised as 11% of the delivery items complete and 77% of other delivery items progressing, with a small number of new items as well. The plan you have in front of you is the result of reviewing the existing delivery plan with officers and members, particularly BDC executive, engaging on refinements to better achieve the objectives of our strategic plan, continue our transformation and balance against financial pressures. Member guidance has been built into this refined delivery plan, particularly through BDC executive sessions during September and October last year, each of those sessions focusing on one of our strategic themes. That covers the overview, Chair, pending our questions.
Thank you very much. Has anybody got anything they would like to ask? Martin.
Just on page 216, the reference H6, the plan for new settlements. Obviously, you've identified there with it not being on track or neither behind or whatever. But again, what are the implications around that one having not started?
I think that one is obviously caught up with all the planning reforms that are coming through at the moment. So I think we just need to wait to see that those come through. And then obviously, if there is a desire then to take forward a new settlement, then we'll do that in line with the new guidance that we're waiting for.
Thank you. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to ask? Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Chairman. Just an understanding question. You talk about in paragraph 3.2, so far 77% of our projects are in progress and 11% have been completed. But I do notice that there are a number of projects that are at risk of not being completed. What is the percentage of those, of the total number? You know, I'd like to be able to see, well, there are a number of projects that might not be completed.
I don't have that percentage to hand, but we will be able to get back to you with that if you want.
Caroline.
On page 209, develop the business case for the Taverham Hub. Why is that at risk?
Chairman, if I may, it's at risk purely because of the timelines, Caroline, because we've been delayed through neutrality. I know that Section 106 has been written, we have access and secure the land, but the earliest we'd have access to the actual site itself, I believe, is 2027. So we're still intending on progressing the way we were, but the delay is caused by the overall delay to the development.
Has anybody else got anything? No? Wonderful. Thank you very much. We'll go to the simple recommendation to recommend the Cabinet approves the updates to the delivery plan for 24 to 26. All those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you. And I'm sorry you had to wait to the end for that very short item. You never can tell.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I am going to close the meeting, therefore, at 7:50. Can't tell 24-hour clock. 7:50 p.m. It was just 7:50 when I said it.